Over the weekend, President Biden spoke at the commencement for Morehouse University, an HBCU, and there were some limited protests inside, some more significant protests outside. Perhaps the most telling moment came when he was introduced, and there was an interesting dynamic in the applause. You had all of the alumni, all of the older individuals who were there, stood up, gave President Biden a standing ovation. The current students, obviously, who are quite young, there's more of they stay seated, and there's more of a sort of polite golf clap going on with them. So we can play that for you. Let's take a look.
The 46th President of the United States, Joseph Biden.
So you can see there the alumni, the family, big standing ovation for the president. Different vibes from the young people, very emblematic, of course, yes, of the age divide within the Democratic Party and how they view President Biden in general, specifically how they view his policy vis-a-vis Israel and Gaza. President Biden himself acknowledged the protesters in his comments, which were interesting for a variety of reasons. Let's take a listen to a little bit of what he had to say.
I want to say this very clearly. I support peaceful, nonviolent protest. Your voices should be heard, and I promise you I hear them. I determined to make my administration look like America. I have more African Americans in high places, including on the court, than any president in American history, because I need the input. What's happening in Gaza and Israel is heartbreaking. Hamas's vicious attack on Israel, killing innocent lives and holding people hostage. I was there 9 days after. Sent pictures of tying a mother and a daughter in a rope, pouring kerosene on them, burning them, and watching as they died. Innocent Palestinians caught in the middle of all of this. Men, women, and children killed or displaced in desperate need of water, food, and medicine. It's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That's why I've called for an immediate ceasefire. An immediate ceasefire to stop the fighting. Bring the hostages home. And I've been working on a deal as we speak, working around the clock to lead an international effort to get more aid into Gaza, rebuild Gaza. I'm also working around the clock for more than just one ceasefire. I'm working to bring the region together, working to build a lasting, durable peace. Because the question is, and you see what's going on in Israel today, what after?
And he goes on to call for a two-state solution. So there were a lot of lies packed into a short period of time there. First of all, I support peaceful, nonviolent protest. Not so much, judging by the comments and actions you've taken as president of the United States. Then he tries to do his, identity politics as if that will be sufficient. If I put this black person there and that black person in another place, as if that is sufficient to cover for the policy choices that many young people object to. But he also says, he calls for a quote unquote immediate ceasefire. Well, this is what he previously was calling like a temporary humanitarian pause, different from a lasting ceasefire, an actual end to the war. And also, in terms of an actual ceasefire, he has his UN officials have vetoed that multiple times. Calls for a two-state solution, something else that has been vetoed by the US at the UN. But the most brazen one is he talks about these pictures, okay? Horrifying images that he paints for everyone. And no doubt, there were horrifying atrocities committed by Hamas on October 7th. That's why the ICC is issuing arrest warrants for top Hamas leaders. However, he keeps repeating this thing about these pictures that he's seen. Originally, he talked about the pictures of the beheaded babies. Well, now we know there were no pictures of beheaded babies because that didn't happen. And it's not me saying that. It's Haaretz. It's an Israeli newspaper and others as well who dug in and said, okay, well, yes, there were atrocities. That particular thing didn't happen. Same thing with this, horrifying picture he paints and claims that he saw these pictures. He did not see these pictures. Last time after he said that thing, then his, people around him had to say, well, he didn't actually see these images. He was just talking generally about the horrors of October 7th. Like, why do you keep doing this?
Because the White House, as you said, let's be very, very clear. The White House specifically said he did not see those images. He's just describing images that were described to him. Now, again, actually, if you're interested and if you're one of those people who believes in the ICC and all of that, go and read what they wrote. They say today, we are still investigating reports of sexual violence on October 7th. And in fact, the only sexual violence they've been able to document, in their report that they write there is of a hostage, a testimony from them while they were in captivity. Now, I know why parse all of this. Well, because it paints a very different picture and perhaps can lead to some emotional justification of things that happened in response to October 7th. And, facts matter when they come from the mouth of the President of the United States, and specifically whenever it comes to the policy that's justified here. And like you said, Biden is all over the map. He changes, like he talks about these images, talks about a ceasefire, talks about a two-state solution. It's like, dude, what do you actually believe? And obviously he's very, very torn, because here we have the image, we have video of the valedictorian actually at Morehouse College who calls for a ceasefire, and he's bemused in the background but then applauds at the same time. Let's take a listen.
It is my stance as a Morehouse man, nay, as a human being, to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Hear the people of this world sing the song of righteous justice. Thank you.
So a couple of options. Maybe he didn't know what he was clapping at. Maybe he was confused. I mean, listen, given the that expression on his face, I definitely wouldn't put it past him. But as he said, it is very clear he doesn't know what's going on. People shouldn't forget, this is all in the context of Biden has a huge problem right now with black voters. We could put this up there on the screen and you can see very clearly for yourself. I mean, quote, in his beloved Philadelphia, previously, Biden faces weariness from black voters. And then, Krystal, there are multiple other incidents here. We have of black voters in the state of Georgia, where Biden was traveling, where he is seeing his poll numbers collapse in terms of black voter turnout, and with Trump actually leading him in the state in basically every single poll that we have of the battleground so far.
So first, let me react to D'Angelo Fletcher is the name of the Morehouse valedictorian who was speaking there. Kudos to him. That's not easy to do with the President of the United States sitting right there behind you to effectively call him out. And, he calls for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, which is different language and different substance than what Biden is calling for. But it's so surreal and so gaslighting to see the President of the United States clapping for something that he himself could push for and achieve in this way of like, yeah, I hope somebody really gets on that. It's like, what are we doing here? So that makes you crazy. With regard to, this was a very intentional choice, speaking at Morehouse. First of all, he was hoping this could be a more controlled setting. Last time he spoke to a college audience, he was interrupted some dozen times. Here, there were some quiet protests, but it went uninterrupted, and he just had to, deal with the valedictorian calling for a immediate and permanent ceasefire. There were louder protests outside, people calling him Genocide Joe, et cetera. But this is part of a sort of campaign swing that is intended to appeal to black voters in general, I think black men in particular, where he's seen the most erosion in his poll numbers. Speaking, I believe, at an NAACP dinner in Detroit. I think that's happening today. And we have some quotes of, this was the New York Times, black voters explaining how they're feeling about Biden at this point. And they spoke to 24 black voters in Philadelphia. I think we have these quotes we can put up on the screen. And only 8 of them out of 24 said they were committed to Biden. So here's some of the concerns that were voiced among these individuals. So here is Latasha Humphrey, who's 36 and is described as an infrequent voter who's considering supporting Mr. Trump if she votes at all. She says, I don't care about what goes on overseas. I care about where I live. You have another individual, 69, who said that as of now, she didn't back Biden. She's angered by his support for Israel and the war in Gaza. She said of the candidates, they're all the same. Democrats, she said, come around to our churches when it's time to vote. Then we don't see them again. Another individual, Clinton Geary, 41, an entrepreneur and organizer, works to end community violence in Philadelphia, said he would support Trump in November. This will be his first time casting a ballot. He saw Mr. Biden as more focused on wars abroad than low-income communities domestically. How are you going to help go to war and you can't help feed people, he said. And Saagar, the reason I pulled these quotes, first of all, it's just always interesting to hear voters in their own voices. But it also occurred to me that there's more of a nexus between, the Israel-Gaza war and people's sentiments about the economy than we perhaps have thought about before because of exactly the sentiment. People see, like, oh, you're moving heaven and earth to fund these overseas conflicts that I don't support and don't, if I care about them at all. And I'm looking at my life, I'm looking at my neighborhood, like, where's you moving heaven and earth to help me and my family? So I thought that was very interesting that came up repeatedly with these Black voters in Philadelphia, this sense of like, you have more care and concern for what's happening with Israelis than you do for me in, downtown Philadelphia.
I agree. I mean, that's always how I've presented the framing. That's basically my position here as well. I mean, it's one of those where watching our politicians and our president and our political system have subservience to a foreign state is nauseating, regardless of whatever that foreign state is. First it was Ukraine, now it's Israel, now it's like a Borg fusion of the two, where of freedom and whatever cause that they're trying to justify. But I completely agree. And whenever we did it here, people can go watch our show immediately after. They broke 30-something years of congressional procedure just to pass foreign aid to 2 foreign wars. They have never done that for any of you. They came close to cut taxes for rich people. So what does that tell you about what the political system actually does and who they work for and who they serve? Even today, our entire feed, if we're going and looking, all politicians reacting or not reacting to the ICC and pledging action. Where are they pledging action? We have an entire block coming up here about the state of our economy, the lowest consumer sentiment, the shocking, revelations about how exactly net worth has gone under the Biden administration, and I don't see any level of concern. And again, this is a country where we should be very clear about. Israel has universal health care. They're very wealthy. I have been there. It's a nice place. And it's nice because, well, we basically pay for all of their defense. High-tech nation, startup nation, they shove this propaganda down your face. And that's fine. You be proud of whatever you want. But, you can't help but come away, having been there and spent a decent amount of time there myself, to say, you people have plenty of money. And you can pay for all your own needs if you want to. You talk such a big game about, we'll go it alone if we must. That's the entire purpose. I say we take them up on it. Go for it,
Here's the thing, too, is, and we talk about the huge generational divide. And in terms of left-wing criticism of Biden and where he's losing voters on the left of his coalition, that it's over Israel-Gaza. We talk about that. And you see the group of people for whom that is the issue, and his policy is of unconditional support is the problem, and their sense that he's supporting a genocide is the issue why they won't vote for him again. But I think what these quotes reveal is that the problem is so much bigger than young people. These are middle-aged and elderly Black voters in Philadelphia who are saying, this is a problem for me. And we know from the polling that Black voters in general are less supportive of the Israel no matter what policy than white voters are. But we also see the way this is landing isn't, about how do I feel about Israelis or Palestinians. It's how do I feel about the fact that you seem to care more about what happens to Israelis than what happens to me. That seems to be very clearly your priority. And from the actions of Congress, I mean, you just can't really come away with any other conclusion when you see the amount of legislation that is being rushed through and all this amount of aid. And, when it's, hey, we want to lift the minimum wage, then it's hard and we can't, we tried, whatever. Yes. Parliamentarian. And when it's, we want to ship billions of dollars to continue, the genocide against Palestinians, then it's, we'll do no matter what, whatever it takes. We'll stay late. We'll figure it out. We'll come up with unorthodox and unprecedented parliamentary maneuvers, whatever we got to do. So they're not wrong to have that sense of like, oh, we see where your commitments and your values are, and it doesn't actually have anything to do with me and the way that I'm living my life. So I thought those were pretty extraordinary comments and really shifted some of the way I was thinking about how people were processing this conflict and the response to it.
I perfectly makes sense. I mean, it's just one of those, it's always been my objection. Same with Ukraine. It's like, why am I, actually, when we showed some of the economic data, you will see very clearly that our support for Ukraine basically tanked the entire US economy, drove up the price of gas, all so that the Ukrainians could defend for 18 months a square scrap of land in eastern Ukraine. That is why Americans paid some extra, hundreds of billions of dollars in gas prices. That's nuts. Same thing here with Israel. It's like, what? We have all this money to be shipping overseas, all these politicians who work on there passing laws so that we can't criticize them. Meanwhile, people's new home mortgage rate is 7.5%, and they don't have enough money for a down payment. That is always the problem with foreign aid, and it's especially the problem with foreign aid when you don't have a rock-solid economy here at home, and our politicians are very clearly not caring about it.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.